He's the one and only Craftaculous. Hello and welcome to your new white 7700 machine made in Sweden. First thing we're going to do is plug in the power cord. You'll see there's a square end and a round end. It only goes in one way. You can get by if you ever lose it with the figure 8 cord that has the two round ends, but use the one that's provided. So this is an interesting pedal. I actually don't see too many of these, so don't lose it because they're harder to replace. This pedal has two prongs, whereas most of the sewing pedals have just the one little like headphone jack. But this one has these two prongs that were popular maybe for Husqvarna, and they can go in either way. But yeah, this pedal's kind of unique. It's only for certain machines, which I already said. So we can power on the machine, and you'll see where you can put your thread under the hood, which is kind of neat. So you can kind of bring that forward and start with a spool of thread, which will go onto the spindle, and then you can put a little retaining cap, which kind of helps from it, bouncing around and screwing up your thread run. The threading is relatively easy, but the first thing we're going to do is take the needle off because we're going to wind a bobbin, and might as well just keep it safe for now. So let's take the needle out by unscrewing the tension knob on the needle. Take it out. Now let's work on the bobbin, which is pretty simple. You go under the first hook, over the second hook, and there's a little thing sticking out there, a little third hook, and you're just going to wrap around it once, and that's going to give you a little bit of tension as the bobbin is winding to the right. Now you'll take your Husqvarna bobbin, which the H logo is, you want it facing you every time, and you're going to wrap clockwise maybe 5 or 6 times just to keep it snug. And you're going to have a little tail left, which is no big deal because you're going to cut that in a little bit. With the logo facing you again, you're going to put it on the bobbin winding area, and you're going to slide the whole thing down, and that engages the motor to spin the bobbin, not the needle area. So once that's set, you can just give it a little spin so it gets all snug and starts going, but then you still have that little pigtail bouncing around. So take out your fanciest snippers. I have my super swan crane snippers. Yeah, I go all out, and then just get rid of that little dangling tail. Now put the bobbin, make sure it's engaged in the motor, and you can finish loading the bobbin to where you need it to. When you're happy with the amount you're going to use for your project, go ahead and cut it, so we can load the bobbin in the bobbin area. Oh, and make sure to put it back in to engage the needle going up and down, because if your needle doesn't go up and down, that means it might have been left in bobbin mode. So this is pretty simple. With the Husqvarna logo, you can see the H there embedded facing you. You drop the bobbin in, and it's going to go in front of the hook right there, and then back, and we just caught it. And then it even gives you a little turnabout over there, and then that's a cutter. Actually, that's going to cut your thread. You could cut it now, or sometimes I just hold it, put the cover back on, and then I pull the thread, and it'll cut on the little knife there, and your bobbin is loaded properly. That's all you have to do. The needles that this machine takes are pretty standard. They have the back is flat, and the back goes toward the back of the machine, the flat part, and then the front usually has the size of the needle. This machine takes 65 size, Schmetz 65, and they seem to work really well with it. You push it up basically until it doesn't go any further, and you can probably just use your fingers. I'm using a screwdriver so you can see the tightening, the tension knob, but you never want to go too tight. You just maybe get it started and then just finger tight, and you're good. You don't want it loose, but you don't want to just crank it. We're going to thread now, and you can turn the knob on the right, which of course I'm not showing you, just to get that hook that was in there in the up position. It's easier to do the threading. So now we're going to do the exact same thing, first hook, second hook, but we're not going to go to that third hook. We're just going to go follow this path underneath the frame, and now that hook that we raised manually is going to be right there, just so we can hook around it. And then this is fun. There's just a tiny little hook that the thread needs to go behind, and I'm going to show you what a pain in the ass it was for me to try to videotape this and hook it. So I didn't get my big stupid hands in the way. Here's me crying. I'm crying during this whole thing. I can't believe how hard this is. This is really hard. Anyway, so once you get it behind that hook, you're pretty much set. All you got to do is thread the needle, which I'm trying to show here. There's the little hole. I lowered the foot. That's called the foot there. I lowered it. I don't know why. Oh, to make a little more room for the thread to go through the needle. That's why I did it. It's all coming back to me. It's really late at night. This is the only time I have to do this. So look at the magic. Look at that magic steady hand thread that needle. That's phenomenal. That should get an award. Something. Best needle thread 2021. Okay, so when you raise the foot is when you loosen the tension on the thread and you can actually pull it. If the foot is down, you can't pull the thread because the tension grabs the thread and you're stuck. So now, see, I can't pull the thread anymore because the tension is down because the foot is down. And that's just the way most sewing machines work, or I think all of them do. This is where the tension is for the thread. This is a good place to start if it looks like the thread isn't sewing right. And then that is the tension for the pressure of the foot, I believe. I can't remember, on the fabric. So those are your two tension knobs that you sometimes have to adjust depending on what fabric you're using. Now we can close it up. It's threaded, the bobbin is in, and now we can select a stitch. The stitches are all numbered to 29, and this is the length of your stitch, like so how far the space is between the holes. On a straight stitch, I don't know what 0 does. Maybe it just sticks the hole in one spot. But 2.5 is decent. This is the width of a zigzag stitch. However, there is a black hole in case you wanted a black hole. So the thing of the point of the zigzag stitch is to go left and right. But if you adjust the zigzag stitch width when you're on a straight stitch, all it does is move the needle to the left or to the right, and then it'll still do a straight stitch. That's good if you need to like sew at the very edge of a fabric. Right now I'm going to go to just showing you how to use the number system. Actually, the left one is the 10 decimals and the digits, and the right one is the single digits. So if you need 29, you would do the 9 and then the 2 on the right, on the left. I don't know, it's this machine is like from the 70s or something. So that was the computational power of their iPhone back then. Okay, so we can put any kind of fabric through, drop the foot. Now the thread is tight and tensioned, and you can apply pressure on the pedal. Maybe start it slow to begin with, and there you go. This machine rocks. It's a pretty badass. It's mostly all metal inside except for very few plastic parts. Your reverse switch is good to do at the beginning and end of a stitch, most stitches, because what it does is it kind of locks the stitch so it won't pop out. So maybe when you get to the end of a stitch, you go backwards like a half an inch or an inch just to lock your stitches. You could do it at the beginning too. You start a little bit, go back, and then continue going forward. There's actually a blade in the back. If you don't have cutters, you can actually just use this little blade on the back on the side there, and you can just wrap your thread around and pull it, and you can cut your thread, your top and bottom threads. That's kind of nifty. The zigzag stitch is number 3, and like I said, you've got the stitch length and then the stitch width, and it looks like it starts at 3 for a stitch width. You can play around with it and see the difference of shortening the stitch or widening the stitch. You can get different results depending on what you want. There's also a pretty neat thing. I'm just making a wider stitch, but you can't really see it. Turning corners on this machine is pretty easy. What happens is you can stop and put the needle in the fabric, and then that way when you lift the tension foot, the fabric doesn't slide around, so you can make a perfect 90-degree turn. The way to do that on the Husqvarna is when you're done, just give it a tap and it'll put the needle down, because it knows it's like, oh, you want the needle in, and then obviously if you did it again it would take the needle out. And that's how you can do a turn. I just showed you. Bonus tip. You're welcome. Yeah. So we're loosening the tension. We're going to take that out and cut it in the back there. Bada bing, bada boom. I think if you wanted to try these decorative stitches, I don't know what they're used for, but I don't know. They're there. I'll show you how they work. Pretty much the same as everything else. Let's try number 14. So the right one for, I was already on 1, but there you go. Decorative stitch. Be a little more careful with these because it's like it's going backward and forward and the needle's going all crazy. So just kind of keep an eye on it and try to keep it straight. The foot that I have on here is only 1 foot that comes with that I have with this machine, but you probably eventually maybe want to buy, there's a foot for, the foot will change depending on what stitch you're using, even though this foot seems to do a lot of the stitches. There you can see that amazing flower pattern. Whoa, you're going to make some amazing napkins with that, I'm telling you. Impress your guests. So anyway, I'm just showing you all the stitches there, but one thing to note is you don't want to pull the thread backward through the machine because that might accumulate lint. So you want to cut the thread at the top and pull it out through the whole system. That way you don't get lint piling up inside the machine and you gotta get it clean. It's a pain in the butt. It's a good practice. The video's over.